Eloisa had always known not to stray too far from her grandmother's house in the mountains of the Philippines, especially after dark. Her grandmother had whispered tales of the Tikbalang, half horse, half human, a creature of terror with long, sinewy limbs, hollow eyes and a sly, wicked grin that haunted the mountains at night, waiting for careless travelers who wandered too deep into its domain. Eloisa, though, had never believed in such tales. She laughed at the idea, calling them silly old myths, meant to keep children from wandering off. But that was before the night the Tikbalang came for her. The air that evening was thick and humid, making it hard to breathe. Her grandmother had fallen asleep. So Eloisa decided to take a short walk down the mountain path, away from the cramped house. She wandered further than she intended, the faint glow of her flashlight bouncing off the dense jungle around her. As she rounded a corner, she felt a strange sensation wash over her, a prickling at the back of her neck. The night had gone unnaturally quiet, with no chirping of crickets, no rustling of leaves, only a low, almost imperceptible breathing that seemed to come from all around her. Eloisa turned, aiming her flashlight into the shadows. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing, but she could feel something. Someone watching her from the shadows. The hair on her arm stood up and her heart beat faster. Still, she shook her head, calling herself foolish, and turned to head back up the path. But when she turned, the path in front of her was gone. Instead, a strange, twisted road stretched ahead, lined with trees that seemed to loom closer and closer. She recognized nothing. She was lost. Panic surged through her, but Eloisa forced herself to take a deep breath. She turned and tried to retrace her steps, but the trail only seemed to twist more, pulling her deeper into the jungle. The breathing grew louder now, echoing through the trees, heavy and ragged, as though something huge and terrible was lurking just beyond her line of sight. She stopped in her tracks, swinging her flashlight wildly. And there it was. A figure standing in the shadows, barely visible between the trees. The figure was tall, impossibly tall, its long limbs stretching in unnatural angles, fingers curling in a slow, almost mocking wave. Eloisa's heart hammered as her light landed on its face, if you could call it a face at all. There was a muzzle where a nose should be, elongated like a horse's snout, with gleaming yellow eyes set deep in its head. A grin stretched across its face, revealing a row of jagged, sharp teeth. The Tikbalang had found her. Frozen with terror, Eloisa could only stare as the creature took a step closer, its hooves crunching softly against the earth. The sound echoed like thunder in the silence. As it moved, it seemed to shimmer, blurring slightly, as though it were caught between worlds. It tilted its head, gazing down at her with an expression that was almost amused. A deep, guttural laugh rumbled from its throat, chilling her to the bone. She tried to scream, but her voice wouldn't come. The Tikbalang took another step, its long, spindly fingers reaching out, close enough that she could see the cracked, dirty nails, smell the scent of decay clinging to it. And then it stopped, leaning down until its face was inches from hers, so close that she could feel its hot, foul breath against her cheek. It whispered in a voice like gravel scraping over stone. Eloisa's mind screamed, but her body remained frozen, trapped in the creature's gaze. The Tikbalang straightened. Then, in a single swift movement, it turned and vanished into the trees, its laughter echoing through the jungle. and suddenly the path was back in front of her, the jungle no longer twisted and strange. With shaking legs she ran, never daring to look back. She stumbled into her grandmother's house, her face pale, her body trembling. Her grandmother looked up, saw Eloisa's expression, and nodded knowingly.
Once it marks you, child, it always comes back. You'll never know when, never know how. But it watches, always watches, waiting for the next time you're alone.
From that night on, Eloisa never left her house after dark. But sometimes she swore she could hear it, breathing just outside her window, its laughter drifting through the night air, always watching, always waiting for her.